Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Cinephile. This week, we're talking about 2000's Return to Me. Jake, what did you think of this movie? Overall thoughts?
I liked it. I wasn't sure what to expect going in. This was your pick this week. I hadn't seen this movie. I hadn't really even heard of it, but it's very early 2000s, late 90s rom-com. Like kind of reminded me of one of my mom's favorite rom-coms called Must Love Dogs. I don't know, it's just timeline, it kind of lines up the same, coming out. But no, I liked it. I thought it was interesting. It had a lot of heavy hitters in it. I mean, you've
It
got
really did.
David Duchovny and Minnie Driver as like our two romantic leads, but that it's got Bonnie Hunt in it, who this is her directorial debut.
She
Was
also wrote
this
the
movie?
script.
Yeah,
hmm
she also like you said, she also wrote the script. Um, she's in it. Robert Loggia is in it. Carol O'Connor. This is Carol O'Connor's last film before he dies.
Is it really? I
Actually,
didn't know that.
yeah. And then it's got Jim Belushi in it.
hmm
It's David Allen Greer, and then Jolie Richardson.
It really is a pretty significant cast
Yeah,
of some heavy hitters. I'm always reminded of, I think it's Family Guy, where there's a clip where he talks about, my name is Robert Loggia. I talk like this. I'm Robert Loggia. Um, and I don't know why, but when I saw Robert Loggia in this, I like thought of that like
I
all the
freaking
time
love
when
him. I
he's.
love him.
I also love just the fact that he is cooking in an Italian Irish restaurant.
The
Like,
concept of an Italian Irish restaurant is like, and also
eh,
Carol O'Connor, like, is a good performance, but just seeing him with an Irish accent as this like loving, doting, caring grandfather, when I'm used to seeing him from uh All in the Family calling Rob Reiner meathead.
yeah, I mean, I kind of liked the accent though. If I'm being honest, I kind of liked that accent. I thought
Yeah.
it was a little endearing. But this movie, man, I the first time I watched it was in Dr. Wes's class um over at Ball State, and he did this as the romantic comedy because it was like a genres class, and so this was the romantic comedy. And I'm actually going to break out some of Dr. Wes's notes a little bit later, but that was the first time I watched this, and I remember it being, this is one of those movies where the idea behind it is kind of clever, but I don't necessarily feel like they always executed it the best.
Hmm.
Obviously the title is Return to Me, which is based off of a song. Um, and you have the concept of, oh, well, this guy's wife dies, and then her heart is transplanted into somebody else, and then that guy falls in love with the other person too. Which it's like it's kind of super cheesy. Um, but also just I don't know, for some reason that premise is so endearing to me
Yeah.
um that I was okay with it. But the first time we watched it, he's like, okay, so we're watching this movie, and I was like, I'd never heard of Return to Me. I know David Duchovny, I know Minnie Driver. I think the only thing I know her from is Good Will Hunting.
Hmm.
Um, she's in that, and I watched it last night, and I don't know. I was texting you a bunch last night about this movie is, as I like to say, it's fried.
Yes,
Um,
you did say it is fried multiple
it
times. I don't know. I feel like I'm glad we're talking about it because I felt like our first two installations in our Romance Month series were like, when Harry Met Sally's kind of realistic as a love story, um, and then if Beale Street Could Talk is like very heavy into realism and
right.
like a very like serious love story. So I like that we picked kind of a rom com with like an off the wall kind of perspective, if you will. And it's kind of like,
Yes.
this is not going to happen to anyone, more than likely.
No.
Don't sit outside the organ transplant wing of the hospital trying to
Right.
pick up people. Like this is just not how it works. This is not how life works. But you're able to the movie's able to convince you to put like that aside,
Right.
slip in what they call the narrative dream, suspension of disbelief.
Mhm.
You accept what's being told to you, even if logic perhaps is telling you that this is a little weird. But it really, I think it pulls you in because it has a lot of heart in it, pun not intended. Which also,
But
did you know
appreciated nonetheless.
it's we did a story at work the other day. I work for a news station, and do you know it's also Heart Health Month?
Is it really?
It is.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I mean,
So eat
I
healthy
have
and
to
get active.
imagine I have to imagine that it became Heart Health Month after Valentine's Day kind of came into
Probably,
its own as a
probably.
Hallmark holiday. So it makes sense to me. Um, but
I heard that story and I'm like, huh, we're talking about a heart transplant movie.
yeah, we
Ironic.
are, including the old Rubbermaid thing that said human organ on it.
Oh yeah,
Like I said, this is a very 2000 movie.
yeah.
The whole mise en scène, which
Mhm.
again, if you didn't watch last week, I talked a little bit about what mise en scène is, but it's essentially everything in the film frame. And Jake, you had said something that I really liked that I can't exactly remember.
Yeah,
Uh,
one of my first video production professors in college, he explained mise en scène is um, you as the creative are making choices, and mise en scène, think about it as everything you choose to put in the frame and everything you choose to leave out of the frame.
yes, and so this movie definitely has that late 90s, early 2000s feel from um, honestly one of the, I guess technically, well, actually technically, would the heart be considered a MacGuffin?
I guess.
I think it would be. I was gonna say one of the mini MacGuffins, if you will, is the phone because that helps set up him coming back and then getting
Yeah,
to know the gang. And we're gonna talk about the gang because the gang are legends.
they're
Um,
funny.
they're
They're funny.
so I can't with the gang. They one, it's clear that they've been friends for a long time.
Yeah,
But two, the fact that they just bring David Duchovny into the fold, but then also just immediately start busting his balls is just spectacular.
the fact
But
that they're playing poker and they just welcome him in. I almost wonder if they're like, huh, see if we get some money out of him.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I can't remember who asked it, but I think one of them asks him if he plays cards or he plays poker. He says, not usually. And they said, well, you're welcome here and sit right down. How much you got? Or something to that effect. And I'm just like, they're really just trying to hustle this guy.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of goes in line with with who they are. But
Yeah.
what I was saying was that things like the cell phone, the outfits, all of that kind of, I mean, we saw a blue mailbox, one of the stand-up ones that you used to put mail in back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
We saw one of those in this movie. So they definitely have that, but at the same time, it's really relatable. I think the characters themselves are very relatable. And I think that has to speak to Bonnie Hunt and how she wrote this. Bonnie Hunt's a comedian
Mm-hmm.
and she's very funny. And I think where she excels in this movie is not necessarily the premise as much as it is how the characters are written. Especially, like I said, the gang, but Jim Belushi's character is very, very funny. I think Bonnie Hunt does a good job herself.
Yeah.
I think some of those kind of background characters are so relatable and funny that it kind of carries the what would be considered, I guess, the verisimilitude or the, do I buy into the premise? I think that really
Mm-hmm.
helps with the premise of this movie. Um, but I mean, it definitely is it's weird to call a movie from 2000 a period piece, but I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
is.
Sitting here in 2023, I feel like we're far enough away. Like we can make a differentiation between cinema of then and cinema of now, if you will. You know what I mean? So I feel like
Right.
it very much has that feel. I mean, David Duchovny's cell phone is like very like early cell phone, what I think of.
Yeah. And
So
I think the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about right off the bat was there's so many memeable moments. Like for instance, when David Duchovny goes on that double date
yeah.
and an ultra Karen is sitting right next to him. I know
God, she
it.
was terrible.
If you don't know what an ultra Karen is, a Karen is somebody that always wants to speak to the manager.
Hmm.
But an ultra Karen is so extra that that is her defining trait. And the defining trait of this person, whose name I do not even care to remember, is that everything is an issue.
Hmm.
She complains the whole entire time. And David Duchovny's like, get me out of this. But she even says that she doesn't want, what was it, Swiss water, or
Yes, it's
because
oh my gosh.
Swiss water made her sick once. I was like,
Yeah,
me watching you in the scene is making me sick. But shout out to Minnie Driver's character for being an absolute savage. Grace pours out the Aquafina and then fills it with tap water, hands it to her with a straw, and then the Karen goes, "Oh, this is spectacular. This really hits the
yeah.
spot." And that's like spitting in the food, kind of. And then they're like, "This is the greatest food of all time."
Good old Chicago
Um,
water.
yeah, that good old Chicago water, enough fluoride
I'm surprised it's not
to
still green from St. Patrick's Day, pulling it out of the river.
right. I know, but I was dying with that character. I was like, come on,
Um,
and so
Also,
I'm really glad
Aquafina, really, that was her choice. Aquafina.
you don't like Aquafina.
It's it's better than Dasani.
I agree. Well, Dasani is the weirdest water I've ever tasted.
It literally tastes like plastic.
It's
Aquafina is a
like,
little better.
I mean, we had Aquafina at Ball State. That was like
Yeah, I never got
because,
bottled water. Or rarely got bottled water.
well, now you're making me feel like a charlatan or something. Um,
Charlatan. Oh my
I don't
god.
know. I got bottled water. I got Aquafina, the big liter bottle water, all the time. And I would drink that, and I really like Aquafina. I mean,
But
this is
everyone
also the
knows.
second episode that we've talked about different bottles of water in the past like 3 weeks, because we talked about Evian water in when
True,
Harry
I
met Sally.
forgot. Yes, good
We're
old product
water
placement.
aficionados.
Yes.
Um,
And
you
everyone
know,
knows that the superior form of water is Ice Mountain.
yes, but not spring water. I don't like
No,
spring water. I like distilled water. That's why I like Connecticut water so much. Connecticut water is the official water sponsor of the Indiana Pacers,
are
and
they sponsoring this podcast too?
they are not. But Kristen
Call us.
Airy,
We
if
would
you ever
like to get
watch this,
paid.
yeah, I want a Connecticut water system in my house. That would be excellent. But enough about water. We just have been talking about
Steer this
different.
truck back on track here, why don't we?
Yeah, yeah. So and also
Return
I just
to the
noticed
podcast.
what I look like, and I do have another shirt under here. So it's not like I'm just wearing a cardigan. Anyway, um we are all over the place, but let's return to, just like you said,
Uh-huh.
return to what we were talking about. There's so many memeable moments.
Yes, yeah, very much so. There's also doing research for this movie. There was like a lot of interesting trivia I found
Hmm,
about this. Like the hospital they do the heart transplant scene at. That's an actual hospital in Chicago, and the only reason they picked that hospital was because Bonnie Hunt's brother is a doctor and he works at that hospital. And so she was just
interesting.
like, "Hey, can we shoot at your hospital?" And that's how they picked that hospital. Um, and then I found this really interesting. So the gorilla in this movie.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So he actually
Harambe.
lives. It's not Harambe, but R.I.P.
Rest in
Harambe.
peace, King.
Rest in peace. Um, the gorilla in this movie. I can't remember what the gorilla's name is,
Sydney.
but Sydney. Thank you. His real name. I wrote it down. His real name is Quan, and he really lives at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago. He's still alive, from best I could find. He's 33 years old, about to turn 34 in the next few months. Guess how many offspring he's had?
23.
6.
Well, 2 times 3 is 6. He's only had, I don't know why I thought I was
I
like,
don't know,
Quam's just, he's helping out the population
but
growth,
he's like the silverback of like the population of gorillas at the zoo. Like he's like the in charge guy now.
That's
Um,
kind of cool. That's kind of cool. I didn't
and
know
I
that.
don't know how long gorillas live in captivity, but 33, I was like, dang, like, is he like on his deathbed or something? Like that seems like an old gorilla. But I don't know. I'm the one with all the
No,
Andy
that
facts,
that
and I
is
don't
that's
know
really
how
impressive
long
that he's
they
still
live.
alive. Oh, I thought,
Hmm.
well, I thought of a memeable moment, another memeable moment.
Yeah,
Um, One, just David Duchovny's bachelor pad is so relatable. But the fact that he put the dog food in the drawer is, I mean, that's like 500 IQ right there. He just pulls out the drawers, scoops it in, and dumps it out. And the first time I watched it, I guess I didn't realize that, but this time I was like, that's genius. I mean, he literally right next to the dishwasher, pop it open,
yeah.
get yourself some, and pour it out. I thought that was an incredibly memeable moment. So I really appreciated that.
It
This
is,
movie,
as the kids say, big brain.
oh, that's a Sigma brain. He's not even an alpha. He's a Sigma.
Oh my gosh.
Um, but this movie actually is a very important romantic comedy. So if we were to move kind of into me talking a little bit about what Dr. West taught me, he has a book that talks about screwball comedy and romantic comedy. And so in this chapter, he talks about there are 5 different components. We're going to go through them and we're going to talk about each one of them that makes a romantic comedy. So the first one is accenting sentiment over silly. The second one is a propensity for serious and or melodramatic overtones. The third one is more realistic characters. The fourth one is a traditional dating ritual, and the fifth one is a slower story pacing. So the first one, the accenting of sentiment over silly, it's dead serious. That's kind of a terrible pun, but it's dead serious about the importance of love, and I think we see that a lot in Return to Me.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that it struggles with, Return to Me, struggles with when it talks about the importance of love, I don't really feel a connection to his wife.
Hmm.
Um, there are only about 3 scenes, and there are a couple times during the movie where she's already passed on that they refer back to that the one scene they had together.
Yeah.
So love in the beginning, I don't really see, but obviously the rest of the film, when he kind of starts dating Grace's character, I mean, you really see that love is very much paramount in the story.
I think I think at the beginning, like you're right, we don't see his first wife a lot. But what we do see, I enjoy it. I think it's cute. Um, just them at the big ball or whatever, the fundraising event. Like I don't know, they're you can tell like they convey this chemistry, this long kind of built chemistry,
Right.
um, very easily. You know, it's very easily to be like, oh yeah, y'all have been married for a bit. Like it's not like we just got married last week. It's like they've probably been married for like a few years.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that, I mean, the audience is really relying on their understanding of what marriage is, I
Yeah.
guess. And just what, I guess they're having to use their imagination to kind of deepen that character. But ultimately, she's not, the only thing important about her character is really, I guess it's really just her heart,
Yeah.
literally her heart, is the main in the fact that she was married to him, but her
You know,
heart is the thing that carries everything.
sorry, I just thought of this. Not, then we can kind of move on. Um, I think maybe just thinking back to this, maybe the biggest expression, if you will, of love that we get from that first, David Duchovny and his first wife, is his reaction when he gets home after the car accident.
Yeah,
The way he just breaks down, which that scene is beautiful to me.
I agree.
The
I agree.
duality, and like I could feel like my emotions being like pulled in like both ways, because like we had been introduced to Grace and we knew she needed this heart, and so like we felt like, and how excited Carol O'Connor and Frank Loggia and Frank Loggia, Robert Loggia, and Bonnie Hunt, like just how excited they are, for this is the moment. If you've known anyone who has gone through an organ transplant or been on an organ transplant list, that's a very like daunting weight, especially like
Right.
if it's and you're in a situation like Minnie Driver's character where it's like time is running out,
Hmm.
and to get that call and that moment of relief, like this is it, this is a moment we've been waiting for, but also realizing like this is a very risky procedure, you know
Yeah. And that
um
kind of even that goes into the second point of the propensity for serious and or melodramatic overtones.
yeah,
I mean, there's some serious, even though this is a more of, I guess, a light rom-com kind of thing, there's some very serious discussions that are had in this movie. One of them being how dangerous organ transplant can be.
mm,
Another one talking about the loss of a wife and how to kind of handle that grief, but then also be okay to start dating again. And when is the right time to do that? There are some people that never do that again.
right,
They
yeah,
never date again. They feel like it's a betrayal. And so kind of exploring that as well is another kind of more serious subject matter that we kind of see in, I guess, what would be considered a romantic comedy.
yeah, for sure. No, it definitely, like, it starts kind of lighthearted and funny and cute, and then it takes like a very like serious turn very quick,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
kind of like a oh crap moment, like this just got serious.
But at the same time, you've got these, which is the third point, these realistic characters that kind of come in and I don't want to say ground because it is serious, but they add the levity that I think is really what makes these serious moments work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, in a romantic comedy, obviously you got the comedy portion, and this could have just been a romance movie, but to add these points of levity, I think that really helps round out the story. And so we've got characters like those four old guys, who's the one of them, I guess, has the hots for the
Wally.
yeah,
His name is
Wally.
Wally.
um Wally. Wally.
No, it's
um
Wally, Wally, as in
right.
the thing that makes me think of that makes me think of a walleye, which is my favorite
Okay.
fish to catch and eat because it's incredible.
I mean, these characters are so relatable. They sit around having conversation about who's the greatest musician, dead or alive, things like that. And I mean, Jake, you and I have had discussions on who's the greatest director of all time,
Yes,
greatest composer of all time. I mean, I think we both agree the greatest director of all time is Steven Spielberg, and the greatest composer of all time is John Williams. But there are other
we agree
people that
on
don't
one of
agree with
those
that.
things.
Oh, do you think John Ford is the greatest director of
Yes,
all time?
I think John. I have the man who shot Liberty Valance
Liberty
right here,
Balance. Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, we're not going to
which
get
we need
into
to do
this
a
argument.
podcast on that sometime.
We do.
Incredible
We
movie.
do. I've seen that too. I also like Jimmy Stewart a lot.
Wow, we're
But we're
getting
not.
really off track. We got to steer this back on.
Yeah, we got to steer this. There are going to be a lot of edits in this one.
Woo!
But yeah, so we have these more realistic characters that I think really ground the story. That really speaks to one of the five main ideas behind a romantic comedy. The next one is traditional dating ritual. A lot of times you see this, it says less controlling woman, but basically in this scenario, David Duchovny's character Bob has a lot more to process and go through. So it kind of makes sense that he's kind of taking the lead
Yeah.
in this. I mean, they both have a lot to process and go through, but it makes sense that he is the one that goes and finds her in Rome at the end. That's more, I guess, the traditional dating ritual, but you see that because he has more growth.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and I mean, you talk about traditional, like it's the man going after the woman, that, you talk about traditional, dating
right,
rituals and culture and everything. It's, you know, the man is supposed to pursue the woman, and he literally pursues her all the way over to Italy in this movie.
right.
So I think, that's a very, it fits perfectly in that vein.
And somehow he was able to find her. It like Rome is not small, and yet,
It's not like you went to the Vatican City or something. Like, this is like whole big Rome.
yeah, my guy was just walking through the streets, saw a red bike, and was like, "Oh, that has to be the bike that I bought her."
Yeah.
Even though she lives in Chicago and flew to Rome, which would imply that she had to like put the bike in cargo
Yeah.
and ship that over as well, which costs money. I mean, like we're not going to get on this tangent, but the scene where she's packing up the car to head
Hmm.
on over to the airport, I'm thinking, how much money does she have for baggage? Like this ain't Southwest. Bags don't fly free. Like she's got like five different bags. She's got her easel thing. She's got a bike that somehow fits in the back of that van. Shout out to the van. But that's not cheap. And so
No.
he sees this red bike and then he's like, "Oh, a nun's biking it. So I'm going to go and put the nun on the on the basket and I'm going to
Why,
bike."
when I saw that, the first thought in my mind was, oh no, he's probably crushed because he probably thinks that she's run away and joined a convent. She was so heartbroken. She pulled the Sound of Music and ran away to a nunnery.
And I also like how that nun, when she's like, "Oh, do you want to ride the bike?" The nun kept saying, "No, no, no," as she's getting onto the bike. "Oh, no, 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 I don't want to." And then she bikes away. And then her two friends,
It's me when someone asks if I want ice cream, and I'm like, oh no 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 no,
"Oh, no, no,
oh
no,
no
no,
no
no.
no no,
No, I don't want this."
not at all.
So, and then the final thing is slower story pacing. A lot of rom-coms, some people don't like because they are a bit slower, but it, especially near the end of the film, becomes slower to kind of wrap things up. And I guess maybe show a passage of time, maybe show um, people kind of growing into who they become at the end of the film, show that growth. I think a lot of times you see a slower story pace, and that's definitely the case in Return.
I think I agree that I think, when you look at it, it's a slower pace, but it doesn't feel slower, which I think is really good. It
Yeah,
doesn't.
no,
It never to me feels like it drags.
right.
So
I
I
think
think being able to like slow down the pace without slowing. How do I want to say this? It's like they're able to slow down the pace without slowing down story progress.
yes,
You with
and
me?
and,
I
and
still
it
feel like we're
almost,
going somewhere.
yeah, and at times I almost thought they tried to achieve too much story. Like it almost seems like they're trying to bite off more than they can chew, because they're like, even from the beginning of the movie, we only see two scenes with the wife, and then it cuts from them dancing. Right, he's in the hospital and she's had a car accident. Obviously, they explain that away, but then they also have different times in the dating, the scheme of them dating, that it just seems like it's a little overt, the time jump. But the reason they choose the scenes they do, which makes it seem like they're biting off more that they can chew, but they are slower scenes that do set up things. So I think there's that cutoff, that back and forth, that really makes it work in
Yep.
this sense. Finally, I just wanted to mention that a lot of times this book talks a lot about romantic singers, and that's one of the things that we've seen honestly, and this is our third in Romance Month, and we've seen it each week
Yeah.
of Harry Connick Jr. Specifically, he did some rearranging of different songs, but each one of these films has a lot of famous songs from more. I don't want to say it's all jazz, but jazz musicians
It's
like a
very
Dean Martin.
crooner ballads,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of
Which,
stuff.
hey, don't get me wrong, love crooner
Love
ballads,
it.
but you
Always
see
put
that a
them on
lot.
when I cook.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh,
secret, it's the secret ingredient.
I do something very similar, or I listen to the Ratatouille soundtrack because that makes me feel like just like the king of the kitchen. But
Without putting a rat under your hat.
right, exactly. There's no rat under here. Um, but I think especially this movie is called Return to Me, and it's based off of a Dean Martin song called Return to
Yeah.
Me. So all of those different aspects, we're learning a little bit today about romantic comedy and
Yeah.
some of the things that make that a unique genre and things that you can look out for and kind of pencil down. But yeah, I just think that's all super, super interesting.
Shout out Dr. Wes Gehring, the legend.
King. I love him. Didn't he call you Bill once?
Yes. I sent him an email because he didn't grade one of my papers. And I signed my name at the end of the email, my first and last name. I get a reply back at like 3 a.m. Hey Bill, I didn't see your paper, so go ahead and send it to me again.
What an OG, man.
And then like 2 hours later, I got this had happened while I was sleeping, and I woke up to two emails. The first one at like 3 a.m. Hey Bill. And then the next one was like 2 hours later. Never mind, Jake. I found it in my junk.
This dude, and then we'll get on to Rosebud and Thorn. But this dude, every day, he wouldn't come in necessarily with notes. I would see him half an hour before the class started, just scribbling down what he wanted to talk about. The dude was so knowledgeable, is so knowledgeable about film. He doesn't need to have a plan. He just writes down what he knows. Like he just knows it all off the
Yeah.
top of the head, and it is so impressive. Um, it does bother me that he just uses scrap paper and doesn't even use like lined college ruled, which don't get me started on that
Kind of
either.
on
But
brand.
anyway, yes, shout out Dr. West. We love you. Okay, now it is time for Rosebud and Thorn. Jake, what are your Rosebud and Thorn?
So my rose, I I was trying to find a performance because I really enjoy a lot of the performances in this movie. I was trying to find one standout performance to give my rose to, and really I couldn't come up with one. So I'm just going to give it to acting in general. That will be my rose because it is such a character driven movie, and
Mhm.
it's just everyone feels so flawless. Everyone feels so assured. So it doesn't feel like they're working as actors, right? They seem to just slip so easily into these characters. And I think I'm going to attribute part of that to Bonnie Hunt being the director, right? She knows, when she makes this movie, like she's well into her acting career. And so I think you see this oftentimes, a lot of times, actors who then take a turn at directing is all the characters seem to flow really well, right? Everyone seems
Right.
to slip into their characters really well, and it's just I feel like there's almost like a sense of ease, right? I'm sure there was this sense of ease on this set, knowing like, no, oh, this isn't some director that's going to take the Alfred Hitchcock approach, and he famously said that actors supposedly he said actors are cattle, and then he said, no, 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 I never said actors are cattle. I said they're like cattle. Um, but no, this completely other side of the coin on this production, I'm sure. And I think that's really one, these are very talented actors and very actors well into their careers at this point. Um, but I think the acting is just wonderful in this movie, and it really carries the movie through all their performances. My bud, I'm gonna say timing. Um, just because I felt like when I say timing as in the beats of the movie, right? I think
Sure.
of
Yeah.
I think of the beat as a sequence or a scene, and that's supposed to evoke, a feeling, a reaction out of the audience. And I think the timing of some of those beats, I was left confused whether I should be laughing or crying, right? Or doing both
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. The one that really kind of stuck out to me is the scene after Minnie Driver's gone to David Duchovny's apartment, and they're having their popcorn, and she finds the anonymous letter that she wrote to um to the husband of the woman who she got her heart. And that's when she realized, like, oh crap, like I got Bob's dead wife's heart. And then she leaves and everything, and then the very next scene is she's crying to Bonnie Hunt and everything, and then Jim Belushi's character comes in and just like, do you want me to kick his ass, Grace? And like, it's funny, but
Yeah, it
like
is really funny.
like I kept wanting to laugh, but like almost feeling insensitive for laughing because Minnie Driver's still over there in the corner bawling her eyes out.
Right.
And then Bonnie Hunt's just like, Grace got Bob's dead wife's heart. And like it's just
Yeah,
like
and
there's like an awkward silence there. And like I'm like,
the way she said that too was like very humorous.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
and maybe it's just because I know Bonnie Hunt from like comedic roles, and like I expect that to be a joke, but it's just like in that pause there, I'm just like, what am I supposed to feel here? Right.
Right.
And I feel there are a couple other smaller moments in the film. That's just one example, but I would say the time I felt lacking, if you will. I felt like it could have been done a little better, right? It could have we could have timed things out a little better. And then my thorn is we've talked about kind of it's not the most realistic film. My thorn is the fact that Bob gets into a relationship a year after his wife tragically dies. And like it's
Yeah.
not only it's hard to believe, but like if you really think about the movie as a whole, like how broken we see Bob in that moment after he comes home from the hospital and he's like laying on the floor, like bawling his eyes out to his dog. Like this is a very raw moment. And like it sounds
Mhm.
funny to describe it, but like it genuinely like tugged at my heart, right? And tugged at my emotions. Like it was a well done scene, and it's just so raw there. But then to go from, if you think going from that to falling in love with this woman only a year later, like that's not realistic
Yeah.
in real life. And also like in the context of the story, it made me kind of like, this is a little cringe.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think for me, my rose again, I think the performances are really well done.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. A lot of times when it comes to actors turn director, performance is always very strong because that's what the actor understands more than anything. I mean, look at A Quiet Place, right? The
Yeah.
performances in that movie are unparalleled, and that's because John Krasinski is an actor,
Right.
and that's what really drives that movie. So I think here the performances, I really like David Duchovny. Um, I thought I thought the way in which he was acting, I really liked his character. I really liked many. I just liked the characters. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think that was my rose. Um, I think my bud though is the story, right? There is a disconnect. The verisimilitude. I mean, I want to believe, right? I want to believe that this could be a real story, but it definitely, I don't, the realism I feel like isn't there. And yes, the acting is good in a lot of these scenes, but at the same time, I think the situations are not set up the best. So while you can have great acting in a scene, the scene itself and what it's trying to say and the circumstances behind it may not make all the sense in the world. And I think the movie suffers from that. I'd say for a thorn, I think that yeah, and like I said, I mean, I guess the bud is kind of a thorn too. Some of these things could be improved on,
Mm-hmm.
but some of these things really take you out of it. Like you said, the fact that he's dating after a year after his wife died, or the fact that Minnie Driver just goes to Rome and then he just comes and shows up. Some of these things, I think the verisimilitude is both a bud and a thorn. Some of the things need to go. Some of the things can be improved on.
Yeah.
So that's definitely my thoughts on the matter. Um, Now is the time where we tell each other what character we think we are. So Jake, I'm gonna have you go first. Who do you think I am?
Okay. I have two for you because I couldn't decide. I think you have a good dose of Bob in you,
No, for sure.
but um I also think you have some Wally in you as well.
Okay.
Just the Wally really stood out to me. Um, just in I don't know, just like his interactions, one with the rest of the guys. Like he's very quick with the jokes and is quick to bust. They're all quick to bust each other's balls, but like Wally especially, I feel like. Um, but then also he's a little with the waitress. He's I think he knows like he's in love with her, but like he's like comfortable in the fact of like, oh, this is just how it is. And what do you mean I'm supposed to walk her home?
Yes, sir.
So, but I think where you're like Bob is, I think Bob is he knows what he wants and he knows what is not what he wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knows immediately that the Karen is
It's a
not who he
Karen.
wants. And I think you're a person who you know what you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think
Right.
there's a lot to say for that, being self assured enough to and self aware enough to know what you want, not in just in relationships but in life.
Yeah.
Um, and when he finds what he wants, he's not afraid to go after it. You know,
Mm.
and
No,
so
I appreciate that. I think I thought of myself a little bit more like Grace, just a smidge in that um she's kind of overthinking it. Like yes, I know the fact that she has his dead wife's heart is not exactly an easy thing,
no,
but she just expects a bad reaction, and while she doesn't get a great reaction, it's also not as bad as she expected. So it's like I feel like she's overthinking it a little bit.
no.
Um and I kind of relate to that. I think for you, Grace's grandpa, through and through, through
Carol
and through.
O'Connor. He's
Carol
just a little
O'Connor.
Irishman.
Uh, I mean, for one thing, he's very kind-hearted and he cares a lot, but he is also one of the guys,
Yeah,
and but he also has a lot of wisdom. And so I think just that just encapsulates you perfectly. That you can be one of the guys, but you also really do care. And sometimes will kind of be humorous in the showing that you care.
yeah,
But you also have a lot of wisdom. So I think that is, I think Grace's grandpa, Carol O'Connor, and you will also, I mean, the fact that he wants to go to Rome.
yeah.
Uh,
Love to go to Rome.
yeah, exactly.
And
But
I don't
I
even have to take
definitely
a
think,
bike with me.
and yeah, no,
I hate paying that
no,
shipping
thank you.
cost.
Exactly. I mean, I had a bike at Ball State and I couldn't fit it in the back of my car, so I just let somebody steal it. It was also it was also kind of rusty and old, so I just let somebody steal it so I didn't have to move it.
Shout
Uh
out to whoever stole it. You really did Ben a solid there.
yeah, for real. Thank you. Thank you. Um but yeah, overall I enjoy this movie. It's definitely different than when If Beale Street Could Talk. I think it's also different than When Harry Met Sally. I think When Harry Met Sally is probably a better film than this, but
Yeah.
there's definitely they're all definitely handle romance in kind of different and unique ways.
Mhm.
So I really enjoyed it. Jake, you would say you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, very much so. It's you're right. It's not, I wouldn't put it in the same tier of When Harry Met Sally. Um, and it would be hard to compare if Beale Street Could Talk because it's such a different
It's
film.
such a different movie. Yeah.
But like it's got a lot of heart and sincerity in it, and I appreciate that. I think if you're looking for a romance movie, um, not everyone looks for something that's real life, right? You
Right.
look for a little bit of an uh, escapist story.
Yes.
So I think it definitely has its place, and I think um, it does a lot of things really well. So, but no, I definitely enjoyed it, and I think it's one I'll come back to. Um,
That's I mean, I'm sure Minnie Driver and David Duchovny are glad to hear that too. Um Next week we are talking about Some Like It Hot.
yeah, I can taking a
Um
completely different turn on romance. This one's
yes.
real off the wall.
This one is real off the wall. Marilyn Monroe stars in this, and so to kind of um end romance month.
Yeah,
I think it's the end of the romance month.
yeah, it is.
But yeah,
Yeah,
kind of end
Jack
it. We
Lemmon,
decided
Tony
we go
Curtis in this, along with Marilyn Monroe, like you said.
right.
It's really funny, really zany. Uh, not going to be talking about a lot of realism, I don't think, but it's a classic, and we all know that I'm the classics nerd. So
Yes, you are. So we are very excited to talk about that next week. But before you go, make sure to leave a comment. Did you watch Return to Me? Have you seen Return to Me? What are your thoughts? Do you have a rose, butterthorn? We'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, hit the like button and hit that subscribe button to make sure that you are updated on all upcoming content from the Cinephile. Like we said, we've got one planned next week and for the rest of the weeks of
and
the
before we go,
yes.
have to get a little off topic here and give a little shout out, because yesterday not only was Valentine's Day, but it was someone's birthday.
Yes, Saint Valentine.
No, uh, no. In addition to being Valentine's Day, yesterday was Ben's birthday. So just want to give a shout out to Ben, and
Thank you.
I hope you had a good birthday and felt well celebrated.
I
Um,
did.
I'm
I
really
did.
I'm really thankful to have you not only as a co-host on this podcast and get to talk about movies with you, but as a friend. You're a real stand-up guy, and I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else. So
I
here's to many
appreciate that. I
more.
appreciate that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. 25. I am a quarter of a century old.
Got a few months
So
before I catch up to you.
yes, yes, but you will. You will. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But we're so glad that you came this week and we are excited to discuss Some Like It Hot next week. But until then, for Jake Biller, I'm Ben Sparrow and cut.